Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
The weekend is here, and before we get started, we're going to be talking a lot about a lot of different things here in this show, Sports IQ with Larry Smith. But we're also going to be spending some time talking about Happy Father's Day, and Tony is a dad. I'm a dad, and Tony's a grandfather as well, but obviously we all had dads, so we will share those moments as well. But first, before we get going, just say again to all the dads out there, Happy Father's Day, and enjoy this weekend. And to all the dads, thank you for all that you do to make our lives wonderful and to build up our society. So, okay, lots to get to. We want to talk about rivalries right now, and rivalries in sports. They really make for great theater, especially in basketball. Wilt versus Russell, Larry versus Magic, Michael versus Isiah, and the ladies' game really is no different. Last night, we got the latest installment in the Caitlin versus Angel rivalry in the WNBA. This game taking place in Indianapolis. These two are linked, and we're going to talk a lot more about this here during the show. But last night, they're meeting in a playoff-type environment. In fact, the Dream closing their second highest scoring game of the season with a 108-101 win Thursday, avenging a double-digit loss to the Fever just a couple of weeks ago in which Atlanta was held to its fewest points of the season. Angel Reese, despite picking up 4 fouls by the midway point of the second quarter, led the way for the Dream with 21 points and 11 rebounds. Now, Reese has been just really on a tear in these last 8 games. She's been outstanding. Angel, playing in her first season in Atlanta, averaging 17 points per game, 13 rebounds a contest, while shooting 44% from the field, and that's up for her. She has 7 of her 10 double-doubles over that stretch of games. The loss snapping a 4-game winning streak for the Fever, who dropped to just 9-6 for the season. The 108 points, by the way, allowed a season high for Indiana. Third loss when scoring 100-plus points this year. By the way, that's the most in the WNBA. Kelsey Mitchell finished with 26 points and became the 8th player in league history to reach 700 career three-pointers. Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, 26 points, 7 assists for her. Aaliyah Boston, 23 points, 8 rebounds. They become the only trio in the league to have multiple games scoring 20-plus points this season. And they've done it 6 times. That's tied for second most for a trio in WNBA history. We've talked about just how fantastic they are. The other two, Mitchell and Boston, really carrying the mail last year while Caitlin was out with injuries. By the way, in case you were keeping track at home, and you may be, the season series now between these two, Atlanta and Indiana, is 1-1. The Caitlin versus Angel series, by the way, overall stands at 5-2 in favor of Clark. And by the way, they will do it all over again on Saturday in Atlanta. That's a 1 p.m. tip-off, and that is on ABC. Now, we'll be talking a lot more about this rivalry of the WNBA coming up here later on in the show. But for right now, Angel gets this one. Her first season in Atlanta after playing 2 seasons, of course, in Chicago. We'll talk more about how that has worked out. Certainly a different atmosphere there. Chicago, as we mentioned yesterday with our friend Stephen Prejean Gardner, really could use her this year with all the injuries that they've had. But she's in Atlanta, and that's the way things go for there. So it's funny. For a while, it was an Atlanta-Chicago rivalry because Angel was there. Now it appears that maybe an Atlanta-Indiana rivalry for the foreseeable future. Time now for today's Moment of Awe. And in the pantheon of all-time great hitters in baseball history, Willie Keeler doesn't always get his due. He quit school as a teenager to play ball with the semi-pro league, eventually making his debut with the National League's New York Giants at age 20 in 1892, and proved to be in a league of his own when it came to hitting. In 19 big league seasons, wee Willie Keeler hit 316 times and once topped 400, and his single-season total of 206 singles stood as a record for more than 100 years. But it was this week in 1897 that saw little joy for Keeler. His 44-game hit streak to open the season came to an end. But it stood as the longest in National League history until Pete Rose of the Cincinnati Reds tied it in 1978. Wee Willie Keeler, small in stature at just over 5 feet 4 inches tall, but larger than life at the plate. Elected to baseball's Hall of Fame in 1939 and a finalist for MLB's All-Century team, the 44-game hit streak gets our moment of awe.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
We continue here at Sports IQ with Larry Smith here as we're approaching the weekend, Father's Day weekend. World Cup continues and on pitches all across the U.S., across Canada, Mexico. And speaking of Mexico, becoming the first team to book a spot in the round of 32, thanks to that 1-0 win over South Korea. And what a match this was. Mexico opened the 2026 World Cup with a 2-0 win over South Africa. And then when South Africa and Czechia played to a 1-1 draw earlier in the day, it opened the door for the winner of Thursday night's match to win Group A. After a scoreless first half, Luis Romo took advantage of a miscue from South Korea goalkeeper who collided with a teammate in the box, lost the ball. That gave Romo a chance to give Mexico the lead. Got to get out of his way. The hero then was Raul Rangel, as the Mexico's keeper made a pair of brilliant saves in the closing stages to deny South Korea the equalizer. United States manager Mauricio Pochettino said Thursday that their star attacker Christian Pulisic is doing much better in terms of the injury to his left calf, but will be assessed by the medical staff later in the day to determine the availability to play against Australia on Friday. Speaking to reporters during his pregame news conference, Pochettino added that he might not be able to recover in time for Friday's match, but is doing everything he can to be fit. Very quickly, producer Tony, want to talk about this a little bit. World Cup. I'm excited at the attention. I know that some of the crowds haven't been what they were hoped for, but I'm really excited about the World Cup finally being here and the way the matches are spread out. It's been great theater and competition throughout this series, and we're just getting started on this.
Yeah, I mean, we got a whole nother month left before we have a World Cup champion, so it's going to be going on a little while. You know, I'm not the biggest soccer fan in the world. I don't know all the rules, and that's one of the things that bothers me because I'm a rules person. I like to know how the game is played and understand what people are doing, and I have a tough time with soccer with that. The game itself, just if you just sit back and watch, is interesting. But look, the World Cup is what it is. Yeah, the crowds are down, but the prices for some of these seats that some of these resellers are getting are just ridiculous. And I was trying to take my grandson up to New York to a sports card convention in mid-July while the World Cup was there. Well, that also happens to be when one of the semifinals for the World Cup is going to be played in New York. The hotel prices are bonkers. I mean, we're talking ridiculous. We're talking $800-900 a night in Manhattan. I'm like, nope, that ain't gonna happen. Yeah. So we will make that trek to New York next year. that simply was not going to happen this year. But and it's just. And some of the crowds have to do with the things that are happening currently in the United States, which we don't really want to get into. But, if you've read the newspapers, you know what's happening here. And some people just flat out didn't want to come to the United States right now.
Yeah. And that's certainly a factor. I mean, you can't deny that or avoid it. It is what it is. The World Cup continues. We'll be talking more about that. Like you, I'm not the biggest soccer fan overall, but I do love the World Cup, what it stands for, bringing everyone together, and enjoying seeing these nations compete for the title. Let's get back to the rivalries issue that we talked about earlier with Angel and Reese and Caitlin Clark. And it's funny, we talked about again that this is the Angel's first year in Atlanta, but I think that, like you said, this rivalry is there to stay, even though it may be more being made of it than what really exists between these two.
Yeah, I mean, I know people want to make a big deal about Angel versus Caitlin and, what happened with the little bit of trash talking at the NCAA final game where they competed against each other in. But look, they're both strong competitors. They're both really, really good players. They both have a great game that they're allowing the fans to see. And, for Angel Reese, this has been a good situation for her because she's surrounded by much better players than she was in Chicago.
Yep.
She is very good when surrounded by other quality players. Same with Caitlin. I don't really believe either one of them could be, say, a LeBron James type, like he's had to carry teams in the past. I don't think either one of them can do that on the WNBA level for long stretches. but they're really, really good when they play inside a system that allows them to showcase their special talents. And both have that with Indiana and with Atlanta. And they both have quality teammates around them so that they can concentrate on what they do best instead of having to try to do everything for everyone in order for the team to succeed.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And I think you're right. Neither one has that. They're going to carry a team. They just don't have that. And I think too, the level of competition is too good. You have this player named Asia Wilson, who's, she's more the dominant LeBron, Michael Jordan type is going to just carry a franchise to a title. We've seen her do it time and time again. And so many other players coming up. What I love about these two that I think where there is a comparison to say, in our generation, Magic and Larry, is that they both had that college championship game, right? The Iowa versus LSU, the Tigers get the win, the whole, the thing on your face, the I don't see you, whatever, the John Cena move, whatever that's, popular among the young people. Everyone made a big deal about that, not realizing because they weren't watching that Caitlin had done it a couple of nights earlier in an earlier tournament game in one of Iowa's opponents. So it's not like it was, Angel was being mad to the girl from Iowa. The girl from Iowa did it too. So, but again, it's what you see.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you see, hear. Everybody reads about it. Everybody watches the highlights. You get these little snippets on TikTok and on Facebook and Instagram and all these other social media platforms. Look, the two of them played together internationally for the U.S. last year. I didn't read about any issues. They complemented each other. They worked together offensively. They worked together defensively. They helped the United States, to a great run in that tournament. So I think, people outside of the sporting world or outside of knowing the two of them make it out to be way more than it is. Are they competitors? Do they each want to win? Absolutely. If you're not a competitor, you're probably not playing at the highest levels of sports for your gender and or league, right? If you don't have that competitive fire, that has to be the first thing. You got to have the talent, then you've got to have the competitive fire. One goes hand in hand with the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, where today's media, maybe not, they weren't around in 1979 to see Michigan State beat Indiana State and Magic over Bird. And then of course the draft, et cetera, and all the, the 80s and the NBA clashes they had in the finals. But while there is a closer comparison, in my opinion, to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, it seems the media wants it to be more like, as you mentioned, rivalries at the top, Michael Jordan and Isiah Thomas, which was contentious. I mean, they were years apart. They never played in college at the same time. Isiah won a title in 81 and then left the college scene. And a year later, Michael comes on as a freshman, Michael Jordan, and helps UNC to the title. But there was a contentious feelings and there was a dislike on whatever level you want to make it between those two. And it feels like the media wants to make Caitlin and Angel like that, Michael versus Isiah, when really the Magic Larry is a good comparison because they were in the college game and they each elevated the pro league when they came in. Magic and Larry at the NBA, making a difference. That still resonates today. And Caitlin and Angel in the WNBA.
Yeah. And look, we all know based off that college game and throughout their pro careers, were they competitors? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did they necessarily want to hug after a game? Probably not. They competed really hard, but they had a level of respect, which grew into a level of friendship. If you've seen any of the documentaries on their roles, they each talk about it, that they developed a respect for each other because of how they played the game and how well they played the game and what they were like off the court. And it became a friendship, mostly through having to work together on commercials, probably for I think they did one for Converse. I want to say they did one for McDonald's, maybe also along the way. But, were they fabulous competitors? Absolutely. Did they want to beat the other one every time they stepped on the court? Absolutely. They would have done anything to win the game. But did they have a level of respect for the man, for the player? Of course they did. And I think there's a deep respect between Angel and Caitlin for how they play the game, and what they can do on the court. There's things that Angel can do that Caitlin can't do. And at the same time, there are things that Caitlin can do that Angel can't do. So they have a wonderful respect for each person and how they play the game. And this rivalry is going to continue, and the media is going to build it up. You know, it would be interesting, obviously, to see them in a WNBA final series, because I imagine that would just be tremendous theater.
Yeah. And that's the kind of the next piece of this, is that this will continue on until one of them wins a title, right? I mean, the way it goes. And I think, when you look at Chicago, the first 2 years with Angel, did not reach the playoffs. They really struggled to get wins. Caitlin, the big rookie year, of course, rookie of the year, was injured most of her sophomore season. And now there's some growing pains because the Indiana Fever, they're a different team now than they were perhaps a year ago, and certainly 2 years ago, with Christine Sides as the coach, and now Stephanie White in her second season as coach. So I think, neither one has reached their potential in terms of a team, in terms of team success. But you have to love what they have done in terms of how they've opened the door for the next generation. Paige Beckers last year on Ion. I mean, we were disappointed because we had so many Caitlin games that she was injured, right? And so the audience would be smaller if Caitlin wasn't involved. Well, Paige came in, and we were getting, million household viewership for Paige Becker's games, and a Dallas team that didn't win a lot. But you can see how they've built, and the Dallas Wings are now better in her second year. AZ Fudd, the top pick this year, the attention she's getting. Olivia Miles, my goodness, what she's doing in Minnesota as a number 2 pick coming out of Notre Dame and TCU. So there's a legacy there with these two that I think is yet to be realized, that we will look back later in 10 years and say, wow, the W is at this level. And it really took a major shift upward in trajectory with this class back in 2024 and Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese.
Absolutely, because it just parallels everything that happened with Larry and Michael. Look, when Larry and Michael came into the league, the NBA finals were on tape delay. Delay, people. You didn't see them live. They made that happen. Their rivalry made that happen. The Lakers, the Celtics returning to their rightful places among the NBA hierarchy, that made NBA basketball must-see TV, must-see theater, and it's the reason NBC and later CBS both paid billions of dollars to have those rights to be able to show those games. It's the reason TNT got into the act on a cable franchise level and bought into the NBA, because of those two and what they did. And Angel and Caitlin have done the same thing in the WNBA. Look, the hype around Paige Beckers doesn't happen if not for Caitlin Clark and for Angel Reese. This CBA looks a heck of a lot different if there is no Caitlin Clark and if there is no Angel Reese. You take them out, you take that never happening, you take that level of the girls' game never getting to the point it is, the college female game, in the NCAA, then this CBA looks a heck of a lot different. I guarantee you.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And the dollars are far less. There is a huge chasm in what they would have been to what they are today, and only growing. This is the 30th anniversary of the WNBA. Just saw a story that was done by Scripps News this week. Scripps News, by the way, also Scripps Sports are the people that own Ion and have the Friday night matchup every Friday night, the doubleheader. And talking about it, just talking to some of the players out in Las Vegas and saying how different it is now to go into where in colleges you don't always play in front of sellouts for most college female players. But in the W, you're going into sold out arenas, and it's not only like Atlanta's, seating 4,000. You're going into arenas. I mean, they're 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 seat arenas that they've got sellouts in every single night. You've got Asia Wilson, who has got her own shoe deal. Caitlin, her own shoe deal. They're both doing massive commercials. Paige Beckers has become a pitch woman just a year in. And so it is, they've become very much what I really loved as well, Tony, was during the men's NCAA tournament and during the NBA playoffs, seeing commercials featuring WNBA players. And what that tells me is that Madison Avenue sees the crossover between the two and sees value in the women's game.
Absolutely. And it's only going to continue to grow as this league grows, as these players grow, as more people come in and play the game. You're seeing more young girls wanting to play basketball now. So you're going to see a continued influx of talent. It can go nowhere but up at this point. And it's always going to come back to those two and that rivalry and the games they put on in college.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. More conversation to come here on this June weekend. Hopefully you're having a good time wherever you are, being safe. We've got more conversation to come after this.
Are you paying too much for term life insurance? There's a tremendous price war among the major term life companies. Rates have dropped dramatically in the past few years. For example, a man age 45 non-tobacco user, $1 million of coverage is only $75 per month, level for the next 10 years. Or a man age 50 non-tobacco user can buy $500,000 of coverage for a monthly premium of only $110. Guaranteed not to change for the next 20 years. That's right, level rates for 20 years. And if you're a smoker, we have great rates for you as well. At the Term Lifeline, we specialize in policies of $500,000 and above. So if you're looking for new or replacement term life insurance, call right now for a free quote.
Rates and availability may vary by state. Sample rate quotes are based on preferred non-tobacco underwriting exam required to qualify.
Call 855-826-7932. 855-826-7932. That's 855-826-7932.
Are you tired of your website making your business look bad? Is your current web developer dropping the ball? Let's face it, if your website isn't making you money, it's broken. Let Neon Rain create a website that turns your visitors into customers. Neon Rain has worked with hundreds of businesses across North America, building custom websites and applications with modern designs that are easy to update and work well on mobile devices. They can do it for you too. What sets Neon Rain apart? They actually deliver on their promises. Call today for a free consultation. 303-957-3092. That's Neon Rain at 303-957-3092. Or visit them at neonrain.com.
Hey, our conversation continues. Let's get into a little baseball. And you know what? It's funny that here we are, latter half of June now. We've reached that. The trade deadline in baseball, always exciting. And one name to keep in mind and keep an eye on this July will be the Tigers' ace left-hander, Tarik Skubal. The lefty made it clear in a story published Thursday in the Detroit News that if the Tigers continue to underachieve as they have done all season, he and Detroit may be in for a parting of the ways. And it's hard to think just a year or two ago that it would ever happen. I feel like he was the guy there for life. He'll make his second straight start tonight since having an innovative surgical procedure back on May 6th to remove bone fragments from his elbow. And he could be in line for a precedent-setting contract as he's set to enter free agency after this season. And if the Tigers fall further out of contention, well, they have the option of trading the two-time defending American League Cy Young Award winner. You imagine that? Getting a guy like that in a trade? In the story, Skubal said, and here's a quote, "The reality is we need to play better baseball or else come to the deadline, you give the front office an option to reassess where this team is," end quote. And if they don't think what they have as a World Series or playoff caliber team, he continues in another quote, then the whole team is going to look different. That's just the nature of the beast, and end quote in that one finally. So imagine the teams that would be lining up for a shot at a two-time Cy Young Award winner entering his prime years. Imagine that. At least for one day, the Chicago White Sox can feel good about playing in Yankee Stadium. The last time a Pale Hole squad won in the Bronx was back on June 8th, 2023, over 3 years ago. Hadn't won since then, but last night, Thursday night, pinch hitter Andrew Benintendi depositing a pitch over the right field seats with the bases loaded for the difference in a 5-1 win over those Bronx Bombers. The White Sox winning for the fifth time in their last 17 road games and finished 6-5 in an 11-game stretch against the Phillies, Braves, Dodgers, and Yankees. Chicago now 39-34, tied with Cleveland in the AL Central. Now, 2 years ago on this date, the White Sox were 20-54 and trailed the Central leading Guardians by 26 games. Yes, that was just 2 years ago. Hard to believe how far they have come on Chicago's South Side. But they actually celebrate wins now instead of trying to get out of town quickly after that pregame tailgate they do. They're outside of Guaranteed Rate Field, whatever they call that stadium these days. I still call it New Comiskey. I'm old school. The Royals, meanwhile, beat the Cardinals 14-6, but Royals fans and baseball fans holding their collective breath as Bobby Witt Jr. left the game with a knee injury. He made a diving stop on a ball, hit into the hole at shortstop in the top of the fourth, and then laid on the ground, clutching his knee. The training staff looked him over. He stayed in the game, but came out for a pinch hitter in the bottom of the inning. There's no word yet on the severity of the injury or how long Witt could be sidelined. He's just 26 years old, all-star shortstop already, hitting .294 for the year with 10 home runs. Now, Major League Baseball and the MLB Players Association off the field, they met on Thursday to continue negotiations for the next collective bargaining agreement. Now, during the latest talks, MLB proposing sweeping changes to the amateur talent acquisition process, one that would shorten the draft and tie signing bonuses to a hard slot value, establish an international draft, and more. High school players would no longer be eligible for the domestic amateur draft, and college players would be draft eligible at age 20. That would be after the sophomore season for most players. Now, currently, high school grads are eligible for the draft, as are college players at age 21. It's really after the junior season for most players. Now, this rule would mean that players like King Griffey Jr., Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, and this season's standout, Connor Griffin, would have had to play a few years in college before becoming eligible for the draft. The proposal would also shorten the draft from 20 rounds to 12. In 2011, just a mere 15 years ago, the Major League Baseball draft was 50 rounds. And of course, we heard the story that years ago, Mike Piazza was drafted, I believe, back in the 80s in the 61st round. So they keep shortening, and fewer and fewer guys can say, yeah, I was a Major League Baseball draft pick. MLB also proposing allowing teams to trade next year's draft picks and using the lottery to set the top 4 selections. Currently, only competitive balanced draft picks can be traded. There are 14 to 15 of those every year, and the lottery sets the top 6 picks. If you think that there will be a quick fix or a quick resolve to the MLB CBA situation, you need to think again, my friend. We keep saying it. We've been saying it all along. This is going to be drawn out, a prolonged negotiation that, again, may wind up in a stoppage and play at some point. We hope not, but we've been through this before. More to come here on the Sports IQ. Reading that last story about the Major League Baseball labor talks, I'm looking at producer Tony and seeing him just shake his head the whole time. So, Tony, let's dig deeper into this. You and I both just feel like, okay, listen, this is not going well in terms of the owners just trying to keep kind of piling on. It feels like more demands in this.
Yeah, they keep adding layers and layers to this thing, trying to whittle away at earning power for players. Look, let's face it, 2 years later entering, that's 2 years you're not getting back over the contracts of your lifetime if you take those 2 years away. If you say you can't enter the league until you're 20, now there's not a lot of players that make it to the majors before they're 20 years old or 21 years old, but there are some that do it. There are guys capable, Trout, the Phillies star Harper. You've had Ken Griffey Jr. do it. You've had a couple of other people do it along the way. Look, Reggie Jackson was playing in his pre-20 years days in the major leagues. So was Mickey Mantle. You can go on and on. I find it really hard to believe that the players union, who is always advocating for as much money as they can to be spent on player salaries, are going to agree in any way, shape, or form to some of these proposals that the owners are putting out there. I mean, I know the owners have got to do something, they feel like anyway, to address certain inequities in baseball, but this just isn't going to fly. This is, you're adding more and more planks that are just going to be harder and harder to move the needle once these negotiations get serious at some point this year.
Yeah, and you're narrowing the field in so many ways. Not only narrowing, who's eligible, right? In terms, like you said, these high school players, and we've seen quite a few come out over the years and have great careers. But you're also then narrowing the draft as well. You've already cut down your minor league system. You don't have as many minor league teams as you used to, so you've cut those costs. And at some point, like you said, if you're the players union, you're like, okay, wait a minute, we have fewer players that are in the system that we're representing. That number continues to dwindle when you count the players in the minors, and then the players, in the majors combined.
Yeah, I mean, you've whittled down that minor league system, that feeder system. You've made a lot of changes to the game in the last 5 or 6 years that weren't necessarily in the CBA, but were kind of outside that CBA that you were allowed to do. And, like I said, every plank that I see the owners put in is a whole nother discussion that has to take place with the union. And for me, from what I understand about the players union and everything I've read, is going to make it tougher and tougher for them to come to a deal. And,
yeah,
this thing could get really drawn out and really odd. Remember back in 94, the last time there was a major stoppage, when we lost the World Series, when we lost the end of the season and the playoffs, the players felt like they had no other choice but to go on strike. They had felt that the demands the owners were making in these preliminary negotiations at about this time in 1994 were so egregious and so out of what they were expecting that they felt their only option was to go on strike, because they know the owners make the bulk of their money towards the end of the season when they get those big TV dollars from the playoffs. And the only way they felt like they could inflict some damage was to not play those playoffs if the owners weren't willing to move. And then on top of it, you lost some spring training games the next year, and you lost some regular season games going into the next season. So
yeah,
it so, to me, feels just like 1994 again, happening all over again. And I just don't see a quick ending to this, or something where there isn't going to be play missed at some point.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the how do I say this? The positive thing for me personally is that we're not hearing a lot of buzz right now about the players walking off the game this season before the World Series yet. But again, we're in the middle of June, and there's still time to come where that could ramp up. But it felt like in 1994, by now, there was that feeling, that conversation already that, listen, this, if you don't get this together, we're going to have a World Series. And of course, the stoppage happens, and et cetera. And my concern is that if they do that, because our media now is so fractured compared to what it was back in 1994, our attention spans are shorter. We have more things to kind of occupy our time with. My concern is that if they lose games this year, if they sit out the World Series in protest, my concern is that it could be catastrophic in the long run in a much larger way, because I'm not sure the attention is there among fans and the general public like it was back in 1994, just because our society is different.
Yeah, that's, that 32 years since that last major stoppage of play, there's been a lot of changes in society as a whole, a lot of changes in baseball, a lot of changes in the media landscape. It'll be tougher for them to come back from that and pick up where the game left. Look, it took extraordinary efforts by McGuire, Sosa, Bonds, all these home run records, these home run chases, Cal Ripken chasing the Ironman record, breaking, Lou Gehrig's consecutive game streak, which nobody ever thought would be broken, and there isn't that happening right now out there in the baseball world. So what would bring it back? I don't know. And the sad thing about it is, as it was in 94, you were having some really good years by some teams you didn't expect, like the Brewers are now, the Expos were then. There were different players coming up. There were the Matt Williams coming up at that time. Other players having just phenomenal years and record-chasing years that got sidelines, like you're seeing now with Jacob Mizrachi, like we've seen with Paul Skeens and some of these other pitchers. This right now looks to be the year of the pitcher if they get to complete it all the way, we'll just have to see. I really hope that baseball has gotten smarter in 30 years, that they know that a strike would be devastating, but I'm not sure we're there yet.
Yeah, I think it's, there's a lot of posturing still. They haven't come right down to it. And I know you and I both have been on the side all along that at some point we're going to lose some part of the calendar. You and I both are hopeful it's early 2027 and not at the end of 2026. And you bring up a great point as well. For those maybe weren't familiar, weren't around like we were and hip deep in it back in 94, 95. That contraction was a real possibility. I mean, that was on the table and was could have happened. I mean, of course, we ended up losing the Montreal Expos as they moved to Washington in our last relocation before the A's recently moved. But that was real. We were talking about, in terms of just reducing teams and reducing costs in that way. Thankfully, we're not there, and it should be a sign as well that it's a healthier league now, perhaps, than it was back in 1994.
Absolutely. There was serious talk of dismantling the Expos franchise altogether, not relocating them to DC, but just getting rid of them. And there was also talk about another couple of franchises, possibly the Brewers. We had heard Pittsburgh, possibly. We had heard a couple other franchises as possibly ones that they were going to contract and remove. Maybe the Marlins were in that discussion. There were a number of factors that were in play when they were trying to figure all of this out back in 94. And, Larry, it was just about this time, if I recall, right around that June time when we were starting to hear the early August deadline to get something done. We haven't heard that yet. So that is a positive sign that we're not hearing those kind of rumors out there that, look, if we don't have something concrete ready to go by the time we get to, August 10th, August 15th, then we're going to have to seriously consider a strike. We haven't heard that yet. Doesn't mean we're not going to, right? But we haven't yet.
Yeah. And like I was saying, I'm like you said, I'm glad that we're not there yet, thankfully. But again, we will we have a long way to go, and who knows, it's going to take just one conversation. But and something else too, the other part of this is that this is how our society changes, is that I don't know that the average fan can name who the leader of the union is. Donald Fair made a name for himself back then, and all the jokes, we used to joke that the only thing to fear is Fair himself, right? He was the union, the top attorney, the leader for the players union. And of course, Bud Selig, the commissioner for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I know I can't right now. I'd have to look it up to see who the leader of the players union is. And, Manfred having taken the mantle and Selig now, no longer in charge. I mean, there were a bunch of hardline owners that really wanted to try to break the union back in 94. That was their goal. They were really hoping. They had seen just a few short years before. Remember in the late 80s, there was the attempt by football to break their players' union and get them to accept the hard cap. So much so that they trotted out replacement players. People, young people probably don't remember that. You and I do. During that 87 season, I think it was, when they trotted out replacement players as they tried to break their union. It didn't wind up working, but they were able to get that hard cap that they always wanted. Those kind of things aren't lost on Major League Baseball owners. They see it. They know what they want. They're just not sure how they can go about getting there to get it. And that's the other thing, this draft stuff, maybe that's a chip they're hoping to trade off. Like, if we propose this, then we can take it back if they'll give us something on the salary cap end. I mean, that's always a possibility in these kind of negotiations.
Yeah. And that's the other piece of this, that you're exactly right, that maybe in terms of a negotiating plea, saying that we know this is a bridge too far, but make us say no. It's funny. I'm helping my nephews, both young men in their 20s with families, and they're trying to buy their first house. I was explaining in terms of negotiating, and I said, listen, just because someone is trying to sell a house for price X doesn't mean you have to pay X. Throw out an option Y, and you never know. They may say yes, and that's money in your pocket. So it's it's negotiating, fair market out there, no question about that. Hey, we'll take a quick timeout right now and come back. We talked about on Thursday our memorable championship moments while we were at CNN, producer Tony and I, but also we thought we'd talk a little Father's Day coming up, and also we would talk our favorite championship moments overall. A little trip down memory lane. That's next here in the Sports IQ.
Do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call. Because the best prices on airline tickets are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. They have access to great prices and discounts with over 500 different airlines, plus 300,000 hotels and rental car companies. Their prices are too low to publish online. The only way to learn more is make a free call. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next trip. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find the best prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next trip.
Welcome back here. You know, we were talking a lot of baseball, and producer Tony and I were talking in the break. Tony, we hadn't referred to the moment of awe earlier in the show. Wee Willie Keeler setting all kinds of records. And like I said, I think he's a hitter that I don't think today's fan gives him enough props for how good he was at the plate.
No, I don't think a lot of fans even know who he is, especially younger. You'd have to go back and read books because there's really no video of Wee Willie Keeler around. If it is, it's very old, very grainy. There might be some pictures, but things like that. I remember reading about him. I had gone to Cooperstown with my family, and my father had picked me up a book explaining some of the people in Cooperstown and some of the greats of the game. And there was pages on Wee Willie Keeler that I had read. And the interesting thing about Wee Willie Keeler is, I played Stratomatic when we were at CNN. It's a baseball game. It's computerized. It's now computerized. It was cards. It's still cards. If you want to play it the old-fashioned way, you can. The Wee Willie Keeler historical card is impressive because there are hits all over the thing. You can't get the guy out. So it was, he really is a great player. And, his record stood the test of time. Like you said, it was Ichiro 100 years who ended his record after 100 years. And you just, you want to hear more about players like that. And that's what gives you a love of baseball, because baseball really is all about history.
Yeah. And baseball is that one game again that, that size doesn't always matter. He was like 5'5", like 140 pounds, one of the smallest players ever to play the game. And yet, 1939, he went into the Hall of Fame. So it was pretty cool. We talked about championships yesterday on CNN. I was curious overall, forget CNN, just overall in your lifetime, what's a championship that really stands out for you?
One of the first ones that I remember watching as a kid was getting to see the Orioles were my team, because I grew up in Rochester, New York, and Rochester was the AAA farm club for the Baltimore Orioles. And the first pro game I had seen, my dad took me to Baltimore to watch the Orioles play. And I remember them winning the championship in 70 after, losing the World Series to the amazing Mets in 69, which just pissed me off to no end as an 8-year-old. But getting to see them win that championship in 1970, the year, a year later, was really the first time I got really excited about one of the teams that I followed winning a title and really kind of collecting in my soul and bonding myself to that team.
I think that for me, there was, and it's funny because I really have no ties. I grew up in downstate Illinois. So why I would be rooting for the Seattle Supersonics in the late 70s? Well, here's the story. Jack Sikma, the center, was from a tiny town called Flanagan, Illinois, and had played at tiny Illinois Wesleyan. So my uncle, who was a huge sports fan, he was the impetus for me being a sports fan and going on to being a sportscaster later in my career, in my life, would talk about, hey, that guy, the white guy with the curly blonde fro. Yeah, he played at Illinois Wesleyan. He's from here. So I rooted for the Supersonics in that series because there was a guy from Illinois who was the starting center on that team. I thought that was just pretty crazy. The other one for me that stands out as a kid is the Chicago Bears Super Bowl Shuffle, January 86, Super Bowl 20. And that was one because as a lifelong Bear fan, I was ridiculed. I mean, I was a kid who had Bears sweatshirts, Bears winter coats, Bears socks. Bears tennis shoes, Bears hats, Bears scarves. I mean, I was Bears everything. And so, but we were terrible. All we had was Walter Payton. But finally, Ditka comes along. Drafts some guys, future Hall of Famers, that great defense. And so I ran outside, 17 years old, high school senior, and just cried out in the cold. Was just so excited. My team finally had won a title.
Yeah, that Bears was a really good, run. They really brought a lot to us. I remember I was in my infancy at CNN. Before that, I'd been there about a year and a half when they won the Super Bowl, and just the fun surrounding those Bears, the controversy surrounding those Bears, the things they did with the shuffle, the things they did on Bourbon Street before the game, it was an exciting team. They were full of characters on that team, and it was always interesting to see it. I think the other one, Larry, for me is watching Magic Johnson lead that Laker team when he had to step in for Kareem. And play center that night, because I was like, oh God, we don't have the big guy, we don't have captain in the middle, because I was a Laker fan and wanted to see them do well. And then to watch, again, I had to watch it on tape delay. I knew I'd heard the result because I didn't cover my ears fast enough when the local news came on at 11 o'clock. I was like, oh no, I don't want to hear this. And I missed it, but I stayed up late. I was just home from college and stayed up late and watched that game, and just the awesome performance that Magic provided in the middle and outplaying Daryl Dawkins was really interesting to me.
Yeah, Magic 42 points, Game 6, 1980 Finals to beat the Sixers. In that, I believe that was in Philly too, if I'm not mistaken. In that game, and it's funny, a moment of awe we had earlier this spring. It was last month, I believe. Magic Johnson wins Finals MVP as a rookie because of that, and 3 days later loses the Rookie of the Year vote to Larry Bird.
Yep.
How did that work? So I think he's okay the way it turned out, I think.
Yeah, I think he'll take the ring and the title and the MVP trophy for that year over the Rookie of the Year award for that year. But, it just kind of brings our show almost full circle there as to what we were talking about earlier with the rivalries with Caitlin and everything. Yeah. And that was kind of the beginning of their rivalry. People forget that during that time of Larry and Magic, there was also Dr. J and the Sixers. And they were an awesome team, and they won a couple of titles in there as well. So it was really, you got to give him some props as well, Dr. J, and getting the chance on that national stage to show his talents after, starting his career in the ABA.
Yeah. By the way, we say again, if you get a chance, watch that ABA documentary that was done by Common, came out earlier this year. It is fantastic. Hey, about a minute left here in the show. I want to again say happy Father's Day, everyone. Tony, happy Father's Day to you. You've always been a great inspiration to me personally, with your wife and your daughter, and how close you guys always have been. Now you're doing that now with your grandson, and it's an honor to be your friend. And I just want to say happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day to you as well. I know you have raised two beautiful children as well, who are well on their way to making a place in the world for themselves in their careers. And they were lucky enough to have a wonderful father and a great mom and your wife, Rita, and all the things that you guys have done as a family. And, for all the dads out there, just enjoy your kids, and kids, if you aren't in the same town with your dad or something, pick up the phone, give him a call, do a FaceTime. Yeah. That's all we really want. We don't need gifts. We just want a little bit of your time, and to know you haven't forgotten about us. That's it.
Yep, absolutely. Just spend some time. In fact, I'm going to be on the road in Tennessee this weekend to see my father-in-law. Just another fantastic guy, big part in my life, and hopefully you have that father in your life as well. Hey, we'll close the show from here. Again, thanks so much. And by the way, my friend, thanks for the kind words. Thanks to you, you guys for joining us. Just a reminder, we're on, you can find us on podcasts, Apple, Spotify, everywhere, all the podcast platforms. We're on all of those. Thanks to Editor Josh getting that set up. We're also on YouTube as well. You can find our archives of shows. Sports IQ LS. Give us a follow, if you will. Hit subscribe. And those daily moments of awe, right? To kind of pick out some cool moments as we see them. Those are there as well. Okay. For our editor, Josh, producer, Tony, I'm Larry. Make this a great weekend. Happy Father's Day once again. Be safe. We'll talk to you Monday here on the Sports IQ.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at Sports IQ LS. We'll see you next time.